Good evening, everyone, and welcome to day number 391 on our daily updates. Today, going to be a major update with some things that have unfolded not only in Russia, but also with NATO and Jens Stoltenberg. We've got a little look at some things that have happened in China and some news on the American front as far as military provisions for Ukraine. So, want to thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate you taking the time to like, share, comment, hit the Amazon list, join the Patreon, whatever it may be. We just appreciate you. Couldn't do it without you. And tonight, going to be quite an update. We're going to start with Jens Stoltenberg, NATO Secretary General. Of course, everybody knows today's the day. Another major round of meetings between Xi and Putin. And yes, I've got some translation for you, some English, some subtitles, and a summary of what this day held there in Moscow. But we're going to start tonight first with Jens Stoltenberg out of NATO making some very direct statements on what is happening there in the relationship that is growing. Make no mistake about it, growing between Putin and Xi, the nations of Russia and China. Here, Jens Stoltenberg.
The meeting that takes place in Moscow is part of a pattern we have seen over the last years, where China and Russia are coming closer and closer. We have to remember that just a couple of weeks, or a few weeks before the invasion last February, President Xi and President Putin met in Beijing, where they signed a joint declaration promising each other a partnership without any limits. And we see how China and Russia are coming closer and closer in the military domain. They have joint exercises, joint patrols, naval and air patrols in the economic domain, and also in the political and diplomatic domain. So the meeting in Moscow is part of that pattern where China and Russia are working more and more closely and building a stronger and stronger partnership.
Very thankful, Jens Stoltenberg calling it like it is. There you have it. We've watched it. It's been this relationship that is building between these two superpowers. They are superpowers, nuclear nations, economic powerhouses, China, Russia. And he says it's not only on the economic front, but it's on the political front. It's on the military front. It's on the diplomatic front. We've been sharing over the last year the joint exercises happening militarily between China and Russia. Folks, this is not a joke. It's happening right in front of our eyes. Now, jumping over, we know that Putin, Xi met all day. They had some private talks. They had some face-to-face conversations. And here, I'm going to give you a summary of what has unfolded today in Moscow. The first thing is Russian Federation out of these meetings is getting stronger. Where are the sanctions? Oh, the sanctions are only coming from the West, I remind you. They have nothing to do with the East, the Middle East, Africa. These nations are rolling in partnership with Russia. Well, they're getting it at a discount. It doesn't matter. The volume. And I remind you, as far as the defensive side, Russia's been preparing for this war in Ukraine for decades. They're prepared with storehouses. Yes, some junk, some wore out, some mess, but they're prepared. Meanwhile, economic partnership growing between Russia and China, Russia and India, Russia and Iran, Russia and Africa. It's happening right in front of our faces. In fact, Vladimir Putin made statements about these economic relationships today. Here's a translation of that for you.
Поставщик в КНР нефти, природного газа, в том числе СПГ, угля, электроэнергии. По графику ведется сооружение объектов ядерной энергетики. Российский бизнес в состоянии удовлетворить растущий спрос со стороны китайской экономики в энергоносителях, как в рамках текущих проектов, так и тех, что сейчас находятся в процессе согласования. Совокупный объем поставок к 2030 году газа составит не менее 98 миллиардов метров кубических, плюс 100 миллионов тонн сжиженного природного газа. Ну и вот только что мы обсуждали хороший проект. Это новый газопровод силы Сибири-2 через Монголию. Практически все параметры этого соглашения согласованы. Это 50 миллиардов.
Natural resources, which Russia is full of, gas, oil. Yeah, we're increasing. We have strategic plans toward 2030. We're going to put a pipeline through Mongolia. Where was the Mongolian delegation? I don't know. But we're going to put a pipeline through Mongolia. And all the time he's speaking with all those delegates there. A couple of things I want you to pay attention to. Notice it's not Putin on one end of a 50-foot long table and Macron at the other end. No, they sat side by side in their chairs in their face-to-face talks. And here in this summary that Putin's giving, right there, and everybody's around him in this table, and she sitting over there. And today it's his turn to gloat. Yeah, look at what we're doing. So this is the economic front, and this is a vital part to understanding this war, because remember, the main attack from the West right now is sanctions. How's that working out for you? Now, Russian Federation also going to begin to work off of the yuan. US dollar, goodbye. We're going to work off the yuan. Now, there was talk made of China's suggested peace plan and peace initiatives, and we're going to get more to that in just a moment, because there's no way it's going to happen as long as Russian soldiers stay on Ukrainian territory. And I can tell you right this minute, drones are flying over Ukraine, and Zaporizhia and Odessa have been hit by cruise missiles tonight. Not happening. This war is continuing. Stoltenberg came out later and said, we are aware that Russia and China, that would be Putin and Xi, are discussing weapons today. China is making no decisions on that, but Russia and China are discussing weapons today. Also came out in the news today that Great Britain wanting to supply Ukraine with tanks, not only with tanks though, but with uranium depleted shells that are much more equipped to pierce armor, they're much more lethal. In fact, Vladimir Putin makes a statement about that, and I'm going to give you that at the end of the update tonight. He basically said, if this happens from the UK, Russia will be forced to respond. What does that mean? You're already responding. You're going to declare war? You're going to sling a missile at London? What are you going to do that you're not doing already? We will see a growing military cooperation. I was getting ready to speak Ukrainian. Palibasa. It's going to happen. Palibamu. It's going to happen regardless. Now, that Chinese peace plan has points on it that the United States would agree to, and that would be about some sovereign territory points of Ukraine and defensive structures in place for the future, but it has nothing to do with Russian forces leaving. It's not going to happen. Of course, the West, Ukraine, not going to stand for Russian troops staying on sovereign territory. So unless there is a ceasefire and a full withdrawal, and even when I was in Ukraine talking to my military buddies there on the front lines, they said, Greg, even if they pull out and go all the way back to their borders, we're going to have to push all the way to the borders, and we're going to have to establish a security perimeter even into Russian territory, a safety zone, what's the word there? Not only a demilitarized zone. There would have to be a barrier, because we're not going to allow this to happen. And anything short of that will be unacceptable. Now, if some type of ceasefire was to happen and Russian troops were to remain on Ukrainian sovereign territory, which not going to happen, but if it did, not going to work, because all it's going to do is allow Putin time to rearm, to push the narrative, to resupply, to gather more troops through conscription. There's only one answer: defeat of the invader. and put them back on their own territory. Now, the final thing that happened was Xi invited Putin to China. And what is the invitation for? It's actually called the One Belt, One Road Conference. Of course, this goes back to the Silk Road, the Chinese Silk Road, and the economic advancements of China throughout the world. I've already shared with you many times. I've been on the Silk Roads in Africa. I've been on the Chinese Silk Road in Pakistan. My feet have literally been on it. These things are real. This Chinese Silk Road runs down through Pakistan, through Afghanistan, pushing down into Tehran, Iran, and finally looping up into Moscow. It comes down through the Karachi port, across the Indian Ocean, out through the Gulf there, heading into Africa, across Africa to the Atlantic Ocean. I've seen them all personally. This is what Vladimir Putin's been invited to come to, is this economic forum called One Belt and One Road. Folks, we've got to pay attention to this, and I don't see it happening. So they're just going to keep clicking along on their own way. Now, a couple of videos I want to show you. The first one is I have video of when Xi was departing, leaving Vladimir Putin, and Xi makes some statements in Chinese, and then his interpreter translates it into Russian. Of course, we understand that, and I'm going to play that for you now. Just listen to it. It's only about 15 seconds. And then I'm going to translate it for you and tell you exactly what he said.
Это как раз сейчас перемены, которые не было в течение 100 лет. Как вместе двигаем эти перемены. Перекиньте, пожалуйста, дорогой друг.
So, you see the nighttime Moscow handshake on the porch. That's where friends meet, right? On the porch. I'm wondering where the iced tea was. And Xi shaking hands with Putin, Putin grabbing his hand. What did Xi say? Well, his interpreter from Chinese into Russian, it was very clearly understandable. Xi said, "We are embarking on the greatest period in this world in the last 100 years. And then Putin agreed with him. Think about that for a moment. We are embarking on the greatest moment in the history of the world in the last 100 years right now. So I ask you, what does that mean? March the 21st, 2023. Let's just take it literally. Let's go back 100 years. We're just coming out, for you Americans, we're coming out of World War I and, of course, the world, but we're entering into the roaring 20s, and then we're going to go into the Great Depression, and then we're going to push into World War II. America comes on the scene as a superpower, and really coming out of that World War I, out of that Industrial Revolution, is when America became the world superpower throughout that 20th century. Now, 100 years later, 2023, Xi and Putin are saying, we're embarking on the greatest moment in time, the last 100 years. To me, it's very simple. America, you're going off the scene. Now, I actually got a clip, and I hope I'm not taken off the air for sharing this. I shouldn't be. I checked it out. Should be legal to share this. But if I go off, I'll see you tomorrow. I want to share this with you. This is a little 1-minute clip, CNN International. So I'm legal to share it. It's after the time frame, all of that. I'm good. But who knows? But I'm going to share it. A reporter there in China talking about the meetings between Xi and Putin. Very, very interesting. And Chinese, ordinary, normal people, what their thoughts and understandings are about Putin, about the war in Ukraine, and about Xi being there in Moscow. Very interesting. Check this out.
A sense of what Chinese people think about Xi Jinping's visit.
This man tells me Xi's visit is good because it can further improve China-Russia relations. He says he likes Putin a lot because he's a cool, tough guy. On the Ukraine war, he says he just hopes everyone can have a peaceful relationship. This woman tells me she hopes Russia wins the war, but peace is best. Another woman says the war and loss of life is heartbreaking and painful to watch. She says it's wrong now for America to send weapons to Ukraine, and she believes in Xi Jinping's vision of world peace. When I ask her what she thinks of Putin, she answers that he's righteous, decisive, swift, and tough. But when I follow up and ask if she's heard of the ICC issuing an arrest warrant for Putin, she responds, I didn't know. He started the war after all. He should sit down with Zelensky and talk. This shoe repairman says, why are they fighting? It doesn't do anybody good. But we don't know who started the war, he adds. It's the Ukrainians, right?
Great little 1 minute clip there of a reporter there in China, just talking to people. It's very interesting what their thoughts are. Don't run judging real quick. Just think about it. These people have no clue what's really going on in the world other than the information they're told. What do you mean? There's been a warrant for Putin's arrest. Well, I didn't hear about that. Putin's righteous. Well, if that's true, then maybe we need to change our viewpoint here. Then the shoe repairman, well, Ukraine started the war anyway. What are they being fed? Exactly. 1 billion people in China, 1 billion people in India, 25% of the global population. What are they being fed? Crazy. This is where we're at, and this is a couple of very powerful days. Now, moving on, let me fix one thing here. Moving on to, as you could see, you got a quick preview there. We end up with Putin and Xi, but now there's another powerhouse there in Asia. And today, the Prime Minister of Japan came to Kyiv. He was there as a show of support while China is in Moscow. The Japanese Prime Minister came to Kyiv. Folks, yes, there was a promise of financial help, and there was also a promise of military aid, non-lethal. So all good, but can we just zoom out and see what's really happening? We're getting close to this conflict growing and going to a new level. It's happening right in front of our faces. Last couple of things that I want to give us for tonight is Abrams M1A1s. That is what is coming to Ukraine. This information came out here just in the last 24 hours or so that the Pentagon has changed its mind. Shocking, huh? Remember, I was just in Ukraine on all the front lines, all of them. I know what's there. I know what's there. Very little. And now, Pentagon deciding to transfer a different version of Abrams, the M1A1 instead of the M1A2. Unfortunately, this is an outdated M1A1. In fact, I've got some notes here. Because it's the M1A1, older technology, it's got 105 millimeter weapon system, analog computer system, outdated protection versus the M1A2, which has the 120 millimeter cannon, digital targeting, communication systems, improved armor. The M1A1, the older version. And actually, General Abrams, for whom the tank is named, said that the difference between an A1 and an A2 Abrams is really a rotary dial-up phone that used to hang on your grandmother's kitchen wall and the newest iPhone running around in your pocket. There is a huge difference. The other thing that the Pentagon said was because we're supplying the M1A1s, we can have those there in Ukraine within 8 to 10 months versus 2 years for the M1A2. My question would be, okay, with what we're seeing between Xi and Putin and all this stuff going on, where are we going to be in 8 to 10 months? Where are we going to be? And we're going to be getting them there then. Also tonight, I've already known this. I was there using Starlink. I'm very thankful for Starlink that was there. I was able to connect on internet in the middle of a war zone sometimes using Starlink. So thank you. But I can tell you firsthand, the prices have been doubled in Ukraine. Number one, that's a fact. In fact, my buddy Andrew Kimmel doing a piece on that. That's a fact. Doubled for the Ukrainians versus any other European nation. That's a fact. Number two, the ability for Starlink to transfer data, positioning, internet data is now severely limited. Starlink, the company, Elon Musk, does not allow Ukraine to use terminals, and that's what they're called, Starlink terminals, in occupied territories over water and when the receiver is moving faster than 100 kilometers per hour. Ukrainian intelligence said it this way: you put it on a boat in the sea, the Starlink, or you move it over 100 kilometers per hour, or push it over occupied territory, which, by the way, is Ukrainian territory, and the Starlink simply stops working. I know this to be true. 100% it is a fact. I'm working with military there and friends there that are using systems to try to extend the range of their drones by satellite communications because the Starlinks are not working. They've cut them off. And it's really interesting to think that there's that much power. It's like a movie that you can actually control where it's hitting data, from space. And I guess it's not that complicated, but that's what's happening there. So all of this stuff going on, all of this stuff unfolding and happening, and Ukraine getting the news that officially, not only are you not getting the M1A2s, you're going to get the M1A1s in 8 to 10 months, but also your Starlink communications is going to be severely slowed down. Now, finally, I'm going to take all of this and summarize it in one statement from Vladimir Putin. And this statement was today. So, folks, everything that I've shared with you over the last couple of days with this summit between Xi and Putin, we can summarize it and bring it all down to about 60 seconds. I'm going to let Putin speak for himself. We've got it subtitled, and actually, I dropped a voiceover on this one. In fact, tonight, if you wouldn't mind leaving a comment in the chat, do you like this type of voiceover? I was there working with our translation team in Ukraine and specifically with Volodymyr Zelensky. Vova was saying, Greg, let's take it to the next level. Let's put the voiceovers on the translation. That way, when people are watching, they don't have to just read the words, but they can watch the video and listen to the English. Let's go for that. Let's take it to the next level. So I told you some more things and new things were coming. This is a piece of it. So as you look and listen, this is the summary of Putin's position on what is happening up to this day, day 391. Here it is. Of course, we have not overlooked the situation around Ukraine. We believe that many of the provisions of China's peace plan are consistent with Russia's approaches and can be taken as a basis for a peaceful settlement when the West and Kyiv are ready for it. However, so far, we do not observe such readiness on their parts. And what's more, I was just told today while we were discussing with the People's Republic of China chairman the possibility of implementing this Chinese peace plan. And the chairman paid a lot of attention to his peace initiatives in our face-to-face conversations yesterday. It became known today that Britain, through the deputy head of its Ministry of Defense, today they announced not only the supply of tanks to Ukraine, but also will use depleted uranium shells. It seems that the West has really decided to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian, not in words, but in deeds. What else do you need to say? We've got a 25-minute update, and it's summarized right there. We're open to the peace. China, you got a great plan, but, we're sitting here working on the peace, and Britain's supplying tanks and uranium depleted shells, and Absolutely, the West is fighting us until the last Ukrainian. Not in word, but in deed. And that was his closing statement today. So folks, if you are wondering what is the position of China and Russia in regard to the war in Ukraine, you had it in that last statement as Xi was sitting there shaking his head. We shall see. We'll be here every day to the best of our ability. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for commenting. And what I wanted you to do and asking you to do is drop a comment there in the chat and say, you know what? I like that kind of voiceover when it's possible. It made it easier for me, or I like reading the subtitles because it is more work, but we want to make it as easy for the community to hear and read and understand and know exactly what's happening in a language other than your own. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for commenting, sharing, liking, continuing to give, Amazon, Patreon, all of it. We appreciate you all deeply. Be blessed, and we will see you in 23 hours.